Thank you for joining me today, and I'm pleased to present this business case to the ABC Insurance Senior Management Team for your consideration. From today, I'd like you to walk away with a strong understanding of the cloud services that are available, and importantly, how we can maximise our revenue and operating efficiencies by adopting some of these services. Today I will take you through the research I've conducted to date, some case studies that support the implementation of select cloud services, a sensitivity analysis to show the impact of unforeseen circumstances on the project, and of course my final recommendations. So what is cloud computing? Cloud computing is an emerging technology that's caused much hype across most industries, and it's changing the way that organisations manage and conduct their business. While the term cloud computing is quite broad and not easily defined, there is a consensus that the term refers to a technical arrangement where users store data on servers controlled by another party, and they rely on software applications stored and executed elsewhere rather than their own computers and local servers. Research suggests that a cloud computing service satisfies the following criteria. Services are delivered over a telecommunications network. Users rely on the service to access or process data. Legal control of the data is held by the users. Some resources on which the service depends are virtualized, which basically means that the user has no technical need to be aware of which server running on which host is delivering the service, nor where the hosting device is located. And finally, the service is established under a contractual arrangement which is relatively flexible. So how's it used? Organisations use cloud services in a number of ways and may choose to only have some services available through external infrastructure. Main services that could be moved to the cloud are storage infrastructure, which are physical devices typically located in a dedicated server room, databases such as CRM, Salesforce is an example, finance and accounting systems, for example Xero, which is accessed online and the data is stored offsite, document hosting such as Google Docs and Dropbox, web-based email such as Hotmail and Gmail. So there's quite a number of advantages in using cloud services to manage and store our data. One of these is cost control. So rather than us actually having expenditure on physical equipment, we move this responsibility onto a third party and we simply pay a monthly license fee. Invisibility. So for all intents and purposes, cloud storage is invisible. So with no physical presence, it doesn't take up valuable space in our office. Storing confidential or sensitive information in the cloud is often more secure than storing it locally. So with online storage services, data is actually encrypted both during transmission and while it's stored, which ensures that no unauthorized users can access the files. One of our biggest issues is backing up, and the issue is follow through, so it just simply doesn't get done. Online storage services makes the tedious process of backing up easy to accomplish because it's automated. Accessibility is a big advantage for us. So from tablets to smartphones, netbooks to desktops, we're actually using more devices on a daily basis than before. And transferring the files between these devices can be cumbersome and complex. However, with online storage services, we can access the account from any internet connection, so whether we're on a mobile browser or we're on our work laptops. Online services, storage services also are ideal for collaboration purposes, so they allow for multiple people to edit and collaborate on a single file or document, and we won't have to worry about tracking the latest version of who has made what changes. And finally, recovery. So in the event of catastrophic data loss, backups of all our original files will be available, so we can restore them with zero downtime. Now that all said, there's actually risks involved in moving to the cloud, some of which are quite significant. So cloud services are network connection dependent. So when the network is down, the cloud services are also down. Likewise, when the network runs slowly, services can run slowly as well, and employees can therefore be affected. So in selecting a provider, it will be important to consider the precautions they've taken to ensure that the network has great uptime. However, the risk really will always remain. Sensitive data processed outside the organisation also brings with it a high level of risk, as outsourced services evade the security measures that we take to enforce internally. So we will be placing trust on outsiders, thus bringing them into the organisation. To decrease the risk, we'll be able to ask for information such as information about the people that are in contact with our data and how our data will be controlled. Ultimately, ABC Insurance is responsible for the security and reliability of our data held outside the company within the cloud. So to ensure that necessary regulatory compliances are being adhered to, the vendor should be able to demonstrate to external auditors that our data is secure. When data location and segregation is a significant issue as well. So when utilising the cloud technology, the chance of us not knowing the location of our data, where it's hosted, or even which country it's located in is a risk. We can mitigate this by having an agreement with the vendor to keeping and processing our data in a particular area. And finally, long-term viability. So ideally our cloud computing provider isn't going to go broke or be acquired or swallowed up by a larger company. But to ensure that our data remains available and secure if such an event occurs, we can simply ask the relevant questions before signing an agreement. Weighing up the advantages and disadvantages of moving to the cloud brings me to the recommendation that we establish a project team to make the transition across. And in terms of scope, I would recommend that we move our existing CRM, our in-house CRM, over to Salesforce, and that we move our data storage over to Amazon Web Services or AWS. The end goals of this project are to support improved process techniques such as continuous delivery, automated builds and automated deploys, to have better disaster recovery, failover scalability and availability, to support outages, upgrades with automated deploys and testing, to have secure and localized Australian hosting, and a $0 cost for new hardware, and likewise for destroying virtual hardware. From the CRM perspective, the aim is to increase revenue. So Salesforce actually claims that businesses who use their services appropriately enjoy a 30% increase in revenue just by having a tool to automate some of the client management, and for the sales teams to have increased access to data. We'll also seek to improve the customer experience to maintain one version of truth rather than our existing database that actually has conflicting information. Collaboration across the teams, which will increase productivity and revenue outcomes. We'll be ensuring that account information is held digitally, so if we do experience turnover in the sales teams, we don't lose any IP. And to maintain accurate communication records in the events of claims disputes. So to understand how this project will have positive outcomes for ABC Insurance, we can review the success of Suncorp, who is Australia's largest insurer. Suncorp had a complex IT infrastructure environment due to its global presence and multiple lines of business and brands. Their implementation of AWS saw them launch a virtual private cloud and a virtual data center in less than 3 months. This has allowed them to plan for the migration of 2,000 applications to the AWS cloud, allowing improved scalability, improved access, better disaster recovery, and for the IT team to focus on delivering Suncorp's primary services rather than maintaining their IT infrastructure. From a CRM perspective, we can look at the success of Allianz Insurance's implementation of Salesforce. This was deployed across 12 offices in 6 weeks to 350 users, showing that this project isn't actually going to take our team away from their primary roles for too long. Further, the implementation at Allianz has shown an increase of 17.5% in their sales team's close rate, which has also allowed them to be more efficient, and the new platform has been widely adopted across the organisation. In addition to the secondary research I reviewed, I also conducted a sensitivity analysis to ensure long-term sustainability and to mitigate the associated risks with this project. A sensitivity analysis is very useful when we're attempting to determine the impact of the actual outcome of a particular variable if it differs from what was previously assumed. So I've created a set of scenarios so that we can determine how changes in one variable will impact the project. So you can see here that we've got the base case. So this is looking at what we can reasonably expect the project to deliver. I have also presented here the impact of our finances if Salesforce doesn't deliver on a 30% increase in revenue. Salesforce provides implementation services, and it's strongly recommended to utilize these experts to ensure that this scenario doesn't happen, where we actually only increase our revenue by 10%. That said, the profitability index is still above 1, so we're still looking quite good in that event. The impact, I've also presented the impact if our revenue for some reason drops dramatically. So for example, we have a financial crisis and that impacts our business. So I analysed the impact of this by reducing our revenue by half, which is quite significant. So this scenario shows that if we have that drop and it continues for the whole 6 years of the period, the project will still deliver a return provided we maintain a 30% increase in revenue from Salesforce. Because of the savings we make by moving to cloud storage, our cash flow is not likely to impact this project significantly. Lastly, I've also presented a best case scenario. So this is where we actually increase our revenue by 25% over the next 6 years, in addition to the 30% promised by Salesforce. This would be a fantastic situation for ABC Insurance. Given that our sales teams do have a growth target of 20%, this isn't too out of the ballpark to think might happen. However, to get there, the project needs to be carefully managed. We need to maintain our systems, and we need to encourage usage of the new applications. So from this analysis, you can see that there are minimal risks for ABC Insurance to implement the cloud services described during this presentation. This therefore leads me to the recommendation that we engage Salesforce and Amazon Web Services to start putting together our formal solution. Once we've received sign-off from the board, I will then establish a project team from representatives across the business where relevant. In particular, it will be important to ensure that the various sales teams are represented during the CRM implementation to maximise the uptake of the new platform. Once the implementation is complete for both CRM and the cloud storage projects, it will be important to monitor and maintain these services, making sure that we're working towards our best case scenario. During this process, there's some lessons that I've learnt in my research. Online, in particular with cloud computing, there is extensive research that supports both arguments as to whether to keep things internal or to outsource it. So we just need to be wary that there are benefits and disadvantages for both sides. It will be important for us to get multiple quotes from our vendors to ensure that we're getting the best solution in place. It's very important to be mindful of the opinion pieces that are online. So mainly sticking to industry research and peer-reviewed articles is much more reliable than looking at opinion pieces. For your reference, these are some of the resources that you can access to review the research. And I thank you very much for your time and welcome any questions you might have.